Item of business will be public comment, and I believe I have someone. Would you come up and introduce yourself, please? Oh.
My name is... No. My name is Roy Harthorn. I'm here as a courtesy to HLC to bring you up to date with the status of the restoration, repair of the Flores Casita. On May 11th, the Ordinance Committee met and considered a staff drafted ordinance change, which you'll find on the second to the last page of the handout. And it's really just a matter of whether you folks have seen this, whether you want to comment on it. I have also included a cover letter, a two-page letter from the then acting Community Development Director, Dave Gustafson, that outlined a process which did allude to a review by HLC of any proposed amendment, and there's been a slight deviation from that process. We don't have great problems with the proposed language, except it does use pretty exclusively the word reconstruction, where the proposed project is largely repair and restoration. There will be two decks and porch covers reconstructed, but however the building itself, the four-room casita, is intact and has been examined by several engineers and architects, all who believe restoration and repair are feasible. And that was our original request of staff, was to allow for repair and rehabilitation, restoration. So the Ordinance Committee passed this item on to the full council on a 2-1 vote, and it will be heard on June the 15th. That does give you the next meeting if you decide you would like to put it on your agenda and have input as to this amendment to your chapter of the municipal code. So that's really all I had to offer. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You can also go online and see the Ordinance Committee meeting discussion online. It's at the last, probably 10 to 15 minutes of the, probably hour-long discussion, because the first, 2/3 of the meeting concerns the changing of the boundaries of the Conejo landslide ordinance, and doesn't really pertain to the Flores Casita. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any question or comment regarding this? Seeing none. Thank you, Roy.
Thank you.
Next item of business is the approval of the minutes of May 12th.
Second.
Are there any comments or revisions?
Okay.
Yes.
Good job on the minutes. Staff,
As always, yes.
page 9, item number 6, under the motion number 3, study adding soil above the underground structure near cottage 37 to allow for more planting. So strike the words roof and above, change above with near. And then just to make comment or motion number 4 a little bit more clear, can you add a comma after the word formal? And then I do recall talking about having the applicant study shifting the underground parking spaces to the south to allow for trees at the corner of Alvarado and Mission Ridge Road. However, as a maker of that motion, I did not state that, but I do remember us discussing it. So if it's okay with staff's protocol, can we add that? No?
No.
Okay.
I mean, you might mention to the applicants when they...
That's fine.
Yeah,
No,
1900.
no problem.
was
I
my-
understand. It was my bad. That's it.
Are there any other revisions or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Opposed? 2 abstentions. The motion passes. Next item of business is the consent calendar.
Madam Chair, item A, 228 East Victoria Street was final approval as submitted. Item B, 2420 Garden Street was final approval as noted. Item C, 207 East Cannon Perdido Street was final approval as noted. Item D, 715 Santa Barbara Street was final approval as submitted. And 107 West Yananali Street was final approval with conditions. And those were reviewed by, let's see, those items were reviewed by, it was a mix. No, I know. Commissioner Adams reviewed, actually, I think they were both all reviewed by Commissioner Schallenberger and Adams.
Great. All those may I have a motion to ratify the consent calendar?
So moved.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries. Thank you. Next item of business are announcements.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp will be absent from today's meeting. And the regularly scheduled Historic Landmarks Commission meeting on Wednesday, June 23rd has been rescheduled for the following day, Thursday, June 24th. Same time, same location, same goes for consent, but just on that different day. So I'm announcing it early so members of the public know if they want to come in. Thank you, and that's all I have.
Are there any other announcements? Good.
Alert everybody, this weekend is the Chalk Painting Festival at the Mission. I will be there painting a square with Santa Barbara Beautiful people, but it's going to be a fun-filled, wild and wacky weekend in front of the Mission steps. So please join us.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Seeing none, let's
One
move.
weather
Oh,
announcement. Guaranteed this weekend we'll have the hottest weekend of the year because it seems like every time we have Ima Denari,
it's true. It's always boiling
you're up
hot
there
on
and
that
people
asphalt.
are passing out on the pavement.
Yes, it's true.
The next
It's-
weekend will be beautiful again. So.
Yes. You're right. Do we have any subcommittee reports? Oh, Mr. Drew.
Weighing in on the West Beach Art Project.
Yes.
There's one left to finish, which is at Chapala, and that's being worked on now. I don't know who to speak with about the trash can that's placed on near the Chumash site, but it should be moved. And there is excessive bird.
Are you on?
I'm just saying all that without my microphone.
Guess what you're going to have to repeat?
That's okay. I heard it.
There's one left to finish at Chapala. The trash can, I think, should be moved at the Chumash site. I don't know who to speak with about that, but I think it should be done. And the herons and ducks in the trees at the kiddie pool are obscuring the swimmer. I was down there this afternoon, and obscuring the swimmer and starting to attack the diver. I don't know if that kind of excess, well, any of that bird poop is excess. It's, I think it's corrosive, and I don't know what to do about it. But the herons were in the trees and very much enjoying themselves.
Bombing away.
By the dozens, yes. This just now, and that something should be done about that because it's also killing the trees.
Yeah.
But that being said, the ones that exist and are in place are really wonderful.
yeah.
They're really beautiful, and I would urge somebody to wash the bird poop away, and then we can enjoy the public art. Huh? Maybe it'll be me too. But anyway,
Oh,
thank you.
thank you, Mr. Drury. Yes, Mr. Peugeot.
Robert Adams and Don Sharp, when he had both his knees on,
Yes.
and myself, we reviewed we had a meeting with the post-Entrada group, whatever it's called now. It's still called the Entrada Santa Barbara. Okay.
Post-Entrada
Okay.
as well.
Yeah. And well, I think the applicants agreed to simplify the project, especially the Mason side elevation. We're working with Area B. And I think it's going to be a lot better. I think our agreement, at least our consensus, is that we've seen too many villages. I think we need less villages and more simple things.
More buildings.
Well, like a hotel should look like a hotel, not like a bunch of hotels. So good news, really.
Thank you. It's encouraging. Are there any other subcommittee reports? Seeing none, let's have that first item of 13 East Cabrillo Boulevard, our concept review of the Lighthouse Restaurant. Ooh. Ah.
Madam Chair and
Yes.
members of the Historic Landmarks Commission, Deborah Ann DeLauro, in Planning Division, and I just wanted to remind you, this item was before you on March 17th for a concept review, and Mr. Wiley sat here, and I just wanted to refresh your memories on a few things. This is really a city project. It is integrated into the Cabrillo Bridge project in that the Rusty's patio shares pilings with the Cabrillo Bridge, and we have negotiated with the Castagnolas to have the try and have the win-win situation here, improve the building and I guess decouple them from the bridge project. And so I believe you had a series of comments of things that you were looking for in the previous design, and in the interim the city has switched architects, and I think it's been very responsive to your first set of comments. Again, they're just here for a concept review. We're trying to move this project along as quickly as possible so that we can get the bridge work underway. And the one thing that I did want to draw your attention to is that there is a trash enclosure component that is placed, you'll see it next to the creek there, and staff isn't quite sure of the disposition of that, whether or not we would be supportive of it being there, but we don't want you to get hung up on that. It's a concept review, and just so that you know, it may come back in a different location or redesigned somehow, but I think overall it's been very responsive to your comments. So with that.
Thank you. I'm going to read our comments to refresh our memories. That is, our motion was continued 2 weeks with the following comments. The landscape buffer between the creek and the building is much appreciated as an amenity to the city and community. There is concern with how the second story is expressed. It should be a more traditional, idiosyncratic view of Santa Barbara architecture with thicker walls and recessed windows. Further explore the expression of the staircase, especially at the roof. It was suggested that it not be a chimney plaster element. The second story should integrate better into the overall building and not appear separated. Create more singularity. Provide first and second floor roof plans, sections, more elevations, and more descriptive photographs of existing conditions. And will you introduce yourselves for the record?
Yes, Richard Six, LMA Architects.
Is that on?
Richard
Great.
Six, LMA Architects, the new architect. And Ginny, you would want to introduce yourself?
There's the microphone right there.
I'm Virginia Castagnola Hunter, and our family, my sister and me and all of our 7 children are involved in this project.
And Pat Kelly, Assistant Public Works Director, City Engineer. I know Steve would want to be here, but he's on a 2-week vacation, and this is a very important project to the city, and thank you for your comments to date, and looking forward to the comments today so we can move forward.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
So I'll go right in. Working with Virginia, we have looked at this in a better, broader way, and one of the most important things is that the adjacent property is owned by the Castagnolas also, so we are taking the opportunity to improve some things on there and take advantage of that. So what the first thing we looked at is right now the property adjacent has 2 unsheltered or unscreened trash bins just sitting out there in nowhere. I think for the interest of the city and for the interest of the views from the remodeled restaurant, and especially as you'll see, we're introducing a upstairs balcony. The views from and the smells to the project would greatly be enhanced by a full enclosure. This enclosure will be fully enclosed and roofed and so forth. It is the new element that would be within the 25-foot setback. However, we don't want to fool with this very non-conforming parking. So if we start to try to move it back, there's this little triangle here of property that gives us the opportunity to have that trash without an enclosure, without disturbing the non-conforming part of the parking. So that was the very first idea that the trade or the working with the adjacent property gave us. The other is that we are going to propose that we have a exit out of the building and across this property with agreements and so forth, and it helped very much straighten out the exiting and scrambled inside. The other thing we're working with is that we're taking a much more aggressive internal remodel of the spaces and so forth. We don't have to get into the interiors, but it gives me opportunities to establish better relationships and put the parts where they should be for the architecture on the outside. One of the important early decisions that we made was that we felt that the existing tower entry was, with all due respect to the previous architect, was squatty and abrupt, and we want to introduce a more grander, a better, more inviting entry. So we're putting our primary entry beside the tower. We will still use the tower entry as a secondary picturesque entry. Interior-wise, we're raising the dining as before. We've taken the exterior stair and moved it interior. The program didn't make sense to take your pizza outdoors and go up or whatever, so we're taking the stair and putting it to the interior. We've also introduced patio dining on this side, and it will help, as you'll see in the architecture, establish a better corner, more classic 90-degree corner at the top story. The aggressive scrambling of the interior has also allowed us to place the elevator and the stair in a very advantageous place for the architecture on the outside. So here are the roof plans. Again, this entry and the stair gives us an opportunity to lower this plate, and the balcony that's above here is halfway up. It's not all the way up to the second story. This will be the main dining area here. Patio, the elevator is right here, so that will be the very tallest portion of the building. And then the stair, being descending, will give us an opportunity to drop this plate. So instead of having complete two-story plates along this whole side, we're pushing this back and minimizing our two-story plates. This is a section through, well, let's go up here. This is a section looking at the tower. Again, from the entry, our stair is in front of us here. We're going up to a balcony. And again, you can see that we're able to drop that plate. And I think when you see the elevations, you'll have a quite happy interface with the tower. Then our classic section here with the two-story volume, the full two-story plate and so forth. This is the creek and so forth. Raised dining from the main finished floor. This is a sequence of sections through the stair and so forth. This one is through the balcony dining here, our elevator, the very peak. This is the very tallest part of the roof. This is looking at the ridge from perpendicular to the ridge. This is giving the idea that we're able to take that plate down and, at the stair and so forth. So pushing this down as far as we can. That's in this area back here. So here are our elevations. So this first elevation is directly from and perpendicular to Cabrillo Boulevard. We have the tower. We have this 1.5-story volume as we enter, and you can appreciate the higher windows from the balcony. Then we climb up the stairs with the half flight window. And we coming all the way up. This is at a slant. So if we move over to our second elevation here, this is straight on from the angle. So we've got our downstory windows and so forth turning the corner, 3 and 2 arches. And then upstairs, we'd like this upstairs to be to be able to be open up as much as possible. So what we're doing is having a series of columns with sliding glass steel frames that will slide apart and nestle against or in the back of the columns. And then as we turn, let's see what else. As we turn again, this is the view directly from State Street Bridge. Here you see this, our last elevation at an angle. And here is our outdoor balcony, 2-story, with the two reflecting the arches coming across. Here's that stair, and here's the roof I'm able to push down over the stair. And then this gable here is the very top, directly above the elevator, which is the highest requirement in the whole project. As far as architecture, I would call it a soft mission revival, whereas the classic signature of mission revival is the arched parapet and the fancy moldings and so forth. Very simple roofs. I'm introducing historically introducing that same shape of molding and so forth in this little triangle, this little drop here between the roofs to kind of bring back and tie in the old with the new. Then this is the east elevation along Helena. We're leaving that alone, and it is a transition into the funk zone. So that's, if you look at the buildings either side of the street, it's appropriate for that transition, and it was out of the scope of the work. Interesting here is this is the 2-story in back beyond, and this is where the balcony and that first volume here hits the tower. As far as what's happening with the mountains, we did 2 views before and after. This one is from the State Street Bridge, and here it is before it is existing. And what we've done is we did a 3-dimensional CAD model, and it was easy to place in the picture because we had the exact tower and so forth. So we drew the tower exactly as the working drawing said, overlaid it, so I'm very confident that what we see is what we get. This is from the fountain, and again, we overlaid the tower on the tower, so it's, I don't think, well, it's I don't think the mountain views are an issue here. One of the things I was excited about when I saw these is that this gable end with its red roof is going to bookend with this one, so it's going to be a nice finish or bookend to the corner. And then I have existing photos if we care to go and look at specific issues. So that's my presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Six?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Six, how far away is the trash enclosure from the creek bank that you're proposing?
Oh, yeah, I
Got a little red line.
did a little red line before I came over. Yes.
My set didn't have a little red line.
There you go.
Okay,
So that's the 25 foot, right?
okay, so then what is this distance here from here to here?
I would guess that would be about 12.
Okay. And are you proposing to cover that trash enclosure completely?
Oh, yeah. Here, the little sketch.
So
Here's
what
that-
you're showing
here's that
there is
little
what you're
guy.
proposing,
Yeah.
and that'll work with
It will.
EFI and...
You know, it does a number of things. It decreases the smell and effect to the project, and it also helps with the water runoff. And here we have, right now, we have an open bin that's
It keeps
soaking.
it also keeps the trash in the enclosure or in the area where it's supposed to be, as opposed to in the creek.
That's correct.
Okay. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, Mr. Drury.
So I just to sort of reorient myself. You're losing a lot of the Cabrillo storefront, basically, because you have to peel it back for the remodeled bridge. Is
Yeah,
that
if
correct?
you look on P1, you can see the hatched area is.
Yeah.
the-
So you're losing all that.
Yeah, that's all
Yeah.
coming back.
Thank you.
I have a question. Did you check with sanitation just to make sure you have enough room for the kinds of bins that they're going to be requiring?
It's going to be tight, and this is small compared to most. It's using the smallest bins. That means more frequent trips, but it's very, very tight. So it's, there's going to be some give and take on all agencies, and so it's planned for the tightest possible right now.
And the bins are for this property, not for
Yeah,
not for the rest of us.
yes, this is dry right now. This tenant is dry, and it's not a restaurant type. The wet and scraps and so forth are handled by the
Handled there, okay.
for the restaurant. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I have a question. Could you explain again why you're retaining this secondary entrance if you're creating this whole entry here?
In respect to the theme and the tenant right now. It could be glassed off and you could look in, but we haven't addressed that with our tenant yet.
I see. Okay, and are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more question. You kind of showed some plant outlines on that embankment as it goes down to that area. Are those incorporating kind of the restoration plans for that creek?
Right.
A little bit, or is that wishful thinking on your part, or?
I can speak to that. Is that this element here is part of the previously approved bridge replacement project, and the restoration plan, is essentially back to this line, which is the existing top of bank, existing edge of the parking lot. And also, the restoration plan is conformance with our coastal development permit through the Planning Commission and the Coastal Commission. This is additional landscaping that this new design allows. Also, this little triangular areas are additional landscaping that this design allows. So from as far as rehabilitating or I don't know if you can really restore the creek down here, but you try your best to rehabilitate at least in some element. Gives us an opportunity for more type of riparian vegetation there.
My apologies, I should have taken public comment before questions, so I think I do have a public comment.
Good afternoon, Kellum DeForest. Is the lighthouse tower essential to the design of this building? What is its function other than that of a billboard for the restaurant? Either the tower should be removed, because it really isn't. I've never thought it was compatible to the Cabrillo Boulevard, but or the building should be designed as if the tower were part of an authentic lighthouse. Now it's just being tacked on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. I'll move to comments from the commission. Oh, yes, Mr. Jacobus.
Just to speak up, the building is older than 50 years of age, but it's been significantly altered in the 70s and 90s. And so the tower is not, although it's been there a while and people do, it's sort of an established feature, is not generally considered historic. So
Thank you. Comments? Okay.
What is your feeling for the tower as the owner and applicant?
I wasn't here when that happened. I was out of the country. My sister likes it. And the tenant, it was the tenant's idea. The tenant actually built that building. We did not build the building. And I've tried not to have an opinion because it's quite a can of worms, and I've tried to stay out of it and let everybody else resolve that issue.
Yeah, you got your answer right there.
Would you like to start with comments, Mr. Schellenberger?
Sure. I would like to add to that response. The tenant has spent and invested a lot in this building, and I think that we've already considerably going to be affecting his interiors and so forth, and to chop that off is it's an important issue for him and an important feature.
Okay. Madam Chair? Oh, well, I'm asking Mr. Schellenberger to start off since he already went with his question.
My comments are all positive. It's a very nice design. The photo simulation showing how much you're peeling back and how much more of the Cabrillo Boulevard view is gained from the State Street Bridge is just great. I don't see any real significant impact. There is a little bit of Riviera view disruption, but I don't think significant. The architecture is very nice. There are some proportional things that we can get to down the line in other reviews, but I think it's all quite nice.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Ms. Boucher.
Yes, Madam Chair. I, oddly enough, was on the committee, whatever it was at the time when this when this tower came in, and I remember David Gebhardt bringing in tower after tower after tower from Spain, and we wound up with this rather than one that we might say was a little more authentic. Okay, so that's just a note of explanation. I think this is vastly improved. Richard, you've done a beautiful job. The building wouldn't be hurt with no tower, but that's just a comment.
Thank you. Do we have additional comments or?
Madam Chair. Which?
Suiting?
I'm going to take a little different stance. It is a very nice building, but it, to me, doesn't jive with the Lighthouse Tower. You've done your best to make it work, and you have a hard nut to crack, but the vernaculars, the vocabulary, it's just not there yet for me. And I don't know that it would ever be there because you have to deal with that Lighthouse Tower. I also feel that the east elevation belongs to a completely different building. You've got a very charming building here.
Perhaps we should be looking at it while you're making these comments.
Sure.
Okay.
The east elevation here belongs to a completely different building, and I can very much appreciate how you are transitioning into the funk zone and that this is very much of a utilitarian street. It may not always be that way, though. You are in an important location here on the waterfront. I don't necessarily have a problem with the trash enclosure where it is, where you're proposing, but I do expect it to be screened with shrubs and creeping vines, that sort of thing.
Yes, Mr. Drury.
I'm over on that page. It does seem like the east elevation goes with the tower quite well. And of course, the tower is authentic. It's exactly like the Tower Point conception. But it doesn't have a Spanish influence. It has an East Coast influence. But the east elevation in it's up on the screen has it coheres with the tower. Maybe something in the architecture on the other elevations that was simplified somehow might be more palatable. So there's that comment. My other comment is, since it's a joint venture with the city, I'm assuming that means that the customers in the new refurbished restaurant will not be looking at the turgid pond that is generally Mission Creek, that there will be efforts made to keep it flowing because it would not be an attractive thing to look down at. So I'm hoping that there's some kind of, it's really hard to remedy sort of an estuary, but if there's an ability to keep the creek flowing, that would be a real bonus for this building and for the Mission Creek in general. Those are my comments.
Thank you.
I think we've worked on that, haven't we, in the contract that we have?
The nature of the Mission Creek Lagoon is highly regulated through the federal, state agencies and is carefully protected by the Coastal Commission. So we're very limited as to what our operations we can move forward with regarding that. However, as part of the Lower Mission Creek project, there is also a lagoon management plan. And hopefully as part of that lagoon management plan, some progress can be made to address those comments, which are very similar to many other people's comments.
Mm-hmm.
Adams?
Let's see. I don't know. I like this building. What I'm not liking at all is the tower. It looks more like a facade you may not need. I like what's happening with the building. I think your outdoor dining area will be really great. That's one comment. The other comment is I want to make a comment about that main entry. It seems like it's too much light and too much window. I think we need more negative space or stucco proportions around that. It seems like it reaches too too high under the eaves. I don't mind the width, but it might be a width and a height issue. The other thing is, as these, I know the creek plan was approved, but another sycamore or upright tree really could do wonders somewhere on that embankment. I see one, and we may have looked at it, but I think another upright riparian, soft, probably a sycamore could add a lot to that elevation. But you know, I think the tower's better than it was before. But now that I look at it, I'm not liking the tower.
Thank you. Yes.
This is a great improvement for considering what we've seen in the past. I think it's a great building as such. It stands on its own. There are a lot of comments about the tower and the east elevation and so forth. This is a remodel. This is not the full building. These are existing conditions. I think the architect has done very well fulfilling a program. Has been very successful with the architecture itself, and it did resolve what we asked the applicant to do, which is to make a transition between the building and the tower. And he does the tower with some kind of a transparent glass facade and tied with a roof at a different height, which somehow separates that from the tower. I see the tower as a folly, as an architectural folly, kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing that used to be done in the 50s all over the place, like the Santa Claus Lane, those type of things. And as such, it's already embedded into the local folklore, and I don't really have an issue with the tower itself. It's as Santa Barbara as anything else. I've grown used to it, I guess. Is it appropriate is it an East Coast element? Yes, it is. And then, well, I don't think we should be so concerned about it. I like the mass Vulcan scale of the trash enclosure. I have absolutely no issues with that. and if this is ready to go to the Planning Commission, I know the environmental assessment is being done, but I'm ready to provide positive comments to the Planning Commission for the development plan.
Mr. Jacobus?
I think Tom's brought up an interesting point that I think the Commission's opinion is that, the idea of the tower looking like a tourist trap, literally. If the door were to come off the tower and that was just a tower sitting next to the main entrance, do you think that might help eliminate, reduce some of that effect that it has that tourist trappy feel to it and maybe make it a little less offensive to the Commission?
Oh, why don't I would entertain a motion because I feel like we're heading towards one, and Mr. Peugeot is offering one. Let's see if your motion can be composed and see if it flies.
The motion will be an indefinite continuance with positive comments to the Planning Commission regarding the mass Vulcan scale of the proposed addition, with the comments that the Commission has no problems with the location and size of the trash enclosure. It requests additional landscaping, and it will work at some of the details after the plan development is done. That's the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. What was that?
Well, I'm still having trouble with that tower. I mean, if that tower weren't there, that building would be totally charming.
Yeah, I agree.
Who opposed?
I did.
I'll vote no, too. I like the building that you've demonstrated.
That motion.
We should put in the motion if the two members of the Commission like the project but have problems with the tower remaining as part of the project.
That is correct. That's pretty good for pulling words out of my mouth.
That motion carries. Do you need anything else from us, Ms. Andaloro?
Act is sufficient at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job, Richard.
Thank you.
It really is.
It is beautiful, isn't it?
That tower is just, maybe make that tower more Spanish.
Well, he did what he's supposed to, and everything costs money these days, you know. You have to think about that, too. And the city's paying for it.
Thank you.
Is the concept review for 925 Paula Street? Is the second concept review?
I think it requires some M&Ms.
Madam Chair, you know what? I was looking at item 2, footer, and the last item, we were asking for compatibility findings, which is this information here before it goes to the Planning Commission. That's why we put that up there. So I'm wondering if you can, if the maker of the motion, if you could reopen it and specifically comment.
I would like to reopen item number 1 in order to find specific compatibility analysis, and the maker of the motion will
I
please
so
add
moved.
that.
So moved.
Thank you.
We need a second, right?
Second.
All those in favor say
All
aye.
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I was reaching for M&Ms. All right.
So so we are adding that. We're adding that
Yes,
comment.
we're adding the
Okay,
comments.
yeah.
Meets all the compatibility analysis,
Conversion.
compatibility requirements.
Quite nice. Useful. They're useful.
He did a very shorthand version.
Okay, so it's on record that
over there.
Yes.
the 6 items.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Oh, Lordy.
Something useful that is not at all anything you would have.
Thank you. We got that problem. Oh, again? There may be some major.
Oops, sorry.
Well, welcome. Will you introduce yourselves to the record, please?
Don Zemer from KBZ Architects.
And Richard Christian from KBZ Architects.
And Sam Maphis from Earthform Design, Landscape Architects.
Thank you.
And we have Pete Ramsdell from the Fire Department here in case we have any questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right.
Don't often have the fire department.
This one? Yeah.
Mhm.
Very bright. Oh, thanks. All right. Well, the last time we were here, there were a number of issues that were of concern. Was everyone here last time? No.
You know what I think I will is read the
Okay,
motion if I
thank
may.
you.
Continue 2 weeks with the following comments. There is concern regarding the preference for an expression of symmetry at the elevation with the arches and how the storefront system is expressed. Provide a developed landscape plan. Replace the existing fence with a wrought iron fence to match the existing proposed gate. To match the existing gate. I think we changed those minutes, but they weren't reflected. And restudy the proposed shed roof.
Okay. Well, the first issue to talk about I have here is the symmetry question. And I don't know if you want to refresh your memory.
Yes. Good idea.
The last elevation you saw was this one here.
Put one up for the camera, too.
Oh, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the initial use of this building was a parking garage. So there were 2 large arches for cars to go in and come out. We're now changing it into an office. So one of the arches will serve as the main entry into the space. So this first elevation you saw a few weeks ago created a kind of an asymmetrical feeling to the 2 main arches. And so I think some of you are concerned over that. And what we had done before was to align the 2 outer windows, the sill height, we're aligning these solid panels at the 2 large arches with that. So this new proposal, we've let the 2 main arches stand alone and de-emphasized the main entry by actually getting rid of the lower metal or opaque panels. So we think that helps to let the two arches read in a more symmetrical way, but still maintaining our main entry. The second question was regarding the canopy. Richard, do you have the section? This is the secondary entrance on the side of the building. Should you go to sheet A 3.0? I probably need one for the camera. We've emphasized the supports at the tile canopy off of this secondary entrance, which is on the south elevation here. And then we've brought in some enlarged drawings of that as well. Do you have any more? Camera. So what we've done is we've emphasized the two outer wood supports of the canopy to make it look a little more substantial. I think you're worried about it looking kind of lost on that large wall. So we've added that element. It's an improvement. Another item was the chain link fence next to the wrought iron gate. And that is a little more complicated because we have another, there's another chain link fence running, I'll pass this around, adjacent to the one that's next to the metal gate. So if you turn the page, you see that the chain link runs all the way down to Chapala Street on the parking lot. Yeah, makes sense.
In other words, the slump block wall is on the south side of the property, joining the two properties, and on top of that is a piece of chain link that exists, and it has vines growing on it now, a grape ivy and also an euphorbia. On the western boundary, there's a chain link fence that exists at 6 feet high, and it's intertwined with an oleander that currently exists on the car wash property. So, yeah, they're substantially planted on the adjacent parcels as well as our proposed planting. I'll get into in a minute as soon as Dawn's presentation, or if you're ready to roll.
Yes.
Okay. Well, to get into the landscaping, part of it introduced was to conceal that fencing. There will be additional planting in the foreground of this parking lot to make that chain link fence disappear, essentially. There exists along that southern property line 4 existing clean palms that we show that will stay and remain. Probably the reason why this vine isn't completely covering it because it's not had a good automatic watering system. It's been a hose adapted connection to a drip system. So our proposal I'll show you is an irrigation plan that'll have an automatic clock that'll make the landscaping as proposed that you see in front of you flourish. There's an existing Arbutus marina that's in this planter now that will remain, an existing big boulder with the fire department's embossed numbers or letters. So that will stay. The cord line will stay. Most of what you see was from a previous design on this parking lot that we'll be supplementing and adding to. The big change you're looking at will be along Chapala Street. We'll be adding 3 36-inch box king palms into the planter cutouts. Additional agapanthus and lantana per the Chapala Street guidelines will be added in those planter pockets. Along the south of the elevation, we've proposed 3 stenocarpus trees. The firewall tree, I think in that configuration, that should soften that side of the building quite nicely. Underneath that, we've picked up the same palette of Agave attenuata, some bird of paradise, rosemary in these curb height planters along the steps to the entry, and some Onigoxanthus, which we also have planted in front of this boundary wall, or a screen wall in front of the big RP device that we're screening with Formium and also Onigoxanthus. I want to show how that elevation might look with these Stenocarpus, the three of them planted along the south side. There was an elevation that I could overlay. This is just a quick concept, but it'll give you an overall feel of what might happen, you know, within the first year. These aren't fully grown. These are maybe after a year or two of growth. We put them in 24-inch box, and the Stenocarpus has more of a vertical form. The plantings along this walkway that goes to this door, as well as these curb planters, will, I think, add a softness to that. This is really where the gate is here, so you will look at this parking lot to about the gate. You really can't see this part of the building from Chapala or from driving up and down the street. So that kind of concludes that. I did do a sketch to kind of emulate what it might look like as well on the Chapala Street elevation, to overlay this one. The king palms being new, the two existing ones on either end, north and south. The Stenocarpus shown against the building, the plantings in the foreground of that wall, and the existing Arbutus marina that's in the back of the property. And it really kind of shows that in essence, that chain link fence to the back and to the south won't really be seen by the new plantings we're proposing.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to ask for public comment. I believe we have someone.
Someone.
Yes. Could be anybody. Well, you really should go before questions, Kellum. I just missed it last time.
Yeah, right, I see. As you saw last time, Kellum DeForest, as you saw last time, when the original plans were displayed, and this building was designed, and still is sort of, a garage there. And what happened was that instead of the solid doors that exist today, back in the 20s, the owners had just had a grilled doors or gates that they put across the arched openings. This might, having the door openings covered with a grill, certainly would let in the light that is needed. You would have windows in front of the grill, but it would be much more in keeping with the historic look of Chapala Street. Now, is then below these, I guess these panels, are the store, is metal still going to be used on the bottom of the window frame, where in the arched openings? I wondered if that was acceptable under the EPV guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Kellum. Remember, these are comments. Every once in a while you throw a question in there.
What?
I said, remember, these are comments on your part. Every once in a while you throw in a question and slip it right in there.
Okay.
I will ask for questions from the commission now.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have to leave now, and I won't be back for the rest of the meeting. So there were a couple, just two things, and I had emailed Ms. Zimmer about Steve Foley's comment. I just wanted to confirm that those were addressed before I leave, because then I can, it all depends on what you end up getting here today. I don't know if it's down for a concept review, but There was the gate, the rolling gate. Is it 20 feet? Because the plans weren't submitted until just now, so I haven't had a chance to review them.
Yeah,
So is the gate 20 feet from the public right-of-way?
Yeah, it's over that. Yeah.
Okay, and then are the Tier 3 stormwater management plan BMPs on there?
That's still an issue we haven't resolved.
Okay, so then I just wanted to let the commission know they would not be able to take an action today.
Okay.
So that sometimes that question comes up, and if I'm not here to answer it, you know. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, questions from the commission?
Yeah. I wasn't here the first meeting, so apologies if this has already been discussed, but was there any discussion of treating the parapet cap at all? With any kind of, there was, okay.
Well, Richard, can you explain that?
Not changing the appearance of it, we will have a metal parapet cap around because we're re-roofing the entire thing.
But this is just basically a thickened wall parapet. It's just, the roof dies into it on the back side, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a sheet metal cap on the top of this, whatever it is, 16-inch thick wall, or...
It's 8-inch for the most part. Some places it's 10.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Adams?
Yeah, this question is for the landscape architect. So you're interpreting the Chapala guidelines to have lantana and agapanthus. Are you seeing that, or is that what it says, or
That's what's written in the guidelines for the street itself. And so, you know, the actual parkway trees are where we're using that palette of planting.
Okay.
And then there's other things to choose from, so certainly we're open to discussing that.
Do you have any other questions from the commission?
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Just
go
on
ahead.
that issue, the folks over with the city arborist has, sometimes the blocks actually alternate different species of trees, as you know, so that in case there's some infected disease gets on the trees, it won't kill everything on the street. So it may, this particular block, this may be the particular tree, and then up the street, although it may change as, you know, to be something that was more of a canopy tree.
I think, well, I might interject that the canopies were used, I think, at the intersections and the bulb outs, but through the core center of the blocks, the king palm was the main dominant species. So that's why we, again, tried that uniformity and kept that uniformity. They're beautiful along there.
Yes? Shooting.
Did you study on the chain link fence the possibility of replacing it? Well, I can point it out on here. Of replacing it from here to the corner. Is that?
We did.
And
it just, I think it would look odd, you know, to maintain the other chain link fence running along the south, and then when it intersects.
Okay, and you don't think this is odd where it joins?
Well, because we have a kind of a larger number.
Okay. That's all. Thanks.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the commission? Okay, let's go to comments then. Yes, Mr. Drury.
First council review, I'd like permission to speak. I like this a lot. I like the fact that it's not going to be torn down and something else put in its place. I've always liked this building for some reason. I like the proportions. I think these plans are wonderful, and I think it's very successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Boucher.
I know there's a lot of chain link fence here, but there's no way I can support chain link. Possibly the rest of it can go as time passes, but this is the wrought iron is a start.
Thank you. Mr. Schallenberger.
So, looking at a photo of the existing building, back to my little parapet issue, I would like to see something done with the parapet. Some coping or some cap of some sort. It's the existing condition is, you know, it's real wavy, and the line is not very clean. And honestly, I don't think a sheet metal cap looks very nice, even if it were nice and straight and true. So maybe a tile cap or, you know, a plaster molding of some type. Other than that, also on the storefront openings, it seems like the symmetry problem is resolved. But I wonder in the breakups if they need to be 4 equal sections instead of 3. Oh, there's a wall behind. Okay, I wasn't here the first time. Sorry. Okay, that's it. Looks nice though. Thanks. Oh, sorry. On the canopy, how are the 2 middle rafters supported? Is there a cross beam that is hidden beyond? Or? Right there.
There is
It's a little hidden header, I think.
Yeah. You didn't see the other detail. Oh, yeah, yeah. That's good. Here you go. You didn't get to see this one. I wondered about it too till I saw that.
That's going to have to be resolved because
Yeah,
it is,
I think what he's saying is correct.
we had a horizontal going back on each of these to the wall.
Oh, I see.
And
they're over a door. So.
There's a door and then there's a light above the door, and so that forced this up beyond what we felt was reasonable. So I thought, well, I'll just take the horizontals out. And that was this morning, and we haven't.
Fair enough. That's early.
I'll need at least another hour to fix this.
We'll give you a half hour.
Okay.
They've done a great job. They resolved the issue with the entry pretty well, I thought, considering the limitations. I would be ready to offer a preliminary, but doesn't have environmental assessment because of the storm water.
Yeah.
So when the time comes, I would like to continue that for preliminary and final once the environmental assessment is complete.
If we have no additional comments, Mr. Adams.
Okay, so let's talk about the planters. I think the king palms are appropriate, especially for mid-block. I think that's a good idea. I think though I'd like you to study the plant material in those planters to incorporate within the guidelines, to incorporate a succulent material. I see agapanthus and lantana as possibly needing maintenance, and it's really tough out there. So, I think that should be strongly considered. I mean, I'm not the designer, but, Senecio would look wonderful there as a ground plane. But anyway, I'd like you to study that, just to set an example of extreme drought tolerance and low maintenance. Anyway, that's a comment I'd like you to study.
Thank you. If there are no further additional comments, I'll ask Mr. Peugeot to...
Indefinite continuance for preliminary and final approval after the environmental assessment is complete with the comments made regarding the landscaping and, hold it a second, there are questions about the chain link fence.
Yeah.
How do we want to resolve that? What's the Commission's pleasure?
Would we like a straw vote in order to give Mr. Peugeot some guidance? All those who are willing to move forward with the chain link as shown, please raise your hands.
Screen, right?
3. There is a majority that does not want that chain link.
Okay, so we'll put that in the motion as well then. So the comments are, what are the comments? Are this landscape comment of adding, what is it?
Study the land, the tree wells and the materials.
Let's try the plant materials on the tree wells.
To be more drought tolerant.
To be more drought tolerant.
And bulletproof.
Bulletproof.
No, just say drought tolerant.
It's understood.
That's the first comment. The second comment is the chain link fence to be redesigned to how do you want to?
El Pueblo Viejo standards.
Redesign redo the chain link fence to meet Pueblo Viejo standards.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
comment on the parapet cap.
Yes.
I saw a picture of it, and I agree with that comment. That needs, something needs to be done.
Take that as an advisory comment regarding the cap and it not being a metal sheet.
Not to be metal.
Yeah. No, it's just an advisory comment, correct? It's not being marked, yeah.
Okay. My question is regarding the chain link fence. The majority of chain link occurs on top of this slump wall, which is embedded into it. So are we supposed to remove all of the chain link on the property?
If I can weigh in on that, I did think about that, and I thought if at least the chain link that were visible down the driveway, so you're looking at it down this way, so that would mean that the chain link that's running north-south, the back of the driveway, I think if that were replaced, that would make a lot of difference. I would love if this was replaced, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Yeah, we have to make, like Louis said, we have to make small steps. Perhaps someday this will be replaced as well. But I can appreciate the fact that it's on top of that slump stone. The difficulty I'm having is where it's interfacing with the proposed wrought iron gate.
So I think if it's okay when we come back, I'd like to study this a little further, the transition, just to show you maybe it would still work.
Maybe it's a different transition. Maybe you have a heavier column there or something.
Okay.
That might work.
I think you have that ability always to
try
you take the time and the effort and convince us.
There is a block wall that separates the two. They both butt into the end of that block wall.
It's probably hard to see here.
Yeah,
so we'll take more photos.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Pardon? Who was the seconder?
I think it was Drury, wasn't it?
Welcome back, Mr. Drury. Next item of business is 321 East Canyon Perdido Street. We're looking here for a concept review continued. This was initial concept review comments were given by the consent reviewer.
Madam Chair, on item 1 I have a question.
Pardon?
On item 1 I have a question before we go on. And
all right. We have a question about item number 1 from Gabriella.
So when the motion was made, the vote was such that Mr. Suding and Ms. Boucher, they both opposed.
Right.
But when you added the comment about the lighthouse, do they no longer oppose the motion? Do you remember at first it was only certain comments that had nothing to do with the lighthouse?
When we made the project feasibility.
And then you said that you had a problem.
Okay.
Two of you had a problem with the lighthouse as it stands.
I still oppose.
When we put, so you still oppose the whole motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm trying to see the comments from the consent, and it says, continued indefinitely to the staff hearing officer with positive comments, but not much more than that.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Basically what happened is that the original proposal went to consent. Don did approve it. It called for one roof terrace and a small addition on the second story. And then the project has changed a little bit. But basically the project is creating, reinstalling. It was a duplex at one time. It was modeled into a single-family dwelling. Now it's been being remodeled back into a duplex. It requires that there be some common open space.
I see.
So there's another deck that appears. Given that there are now 3 roof decks on the project, and that it's near the El Caseria neighborhood, which is kind of, touchy about things, we figured that it should be something that the full board should weigh in on, and that's why it's come back to you as a full board project.
Thank you. Okay, will you introduce yourself for the record?
Yeah, I'm Jeff Shelton. I'm the architect for the Terrells, and like it was introduced, this project was a duplex on 2 lots, and then it turned into they divided it or opened it up to a single unit, which they live in now, with their kids, and they're wanting to put it back into it, be able to put it back into a duplex, once again for their kids. So the first few sheets here are what's existing. I think we can go right to what we're proposing because we're not proposing a whole lot. Well, so if you look at the plan, and everybody has a plan, we are, of course, to turn it into a duplex, we'll have to close it off at some place and add a kitchen. The other things we were adding to this, it's in this terrific neighborhood. El Casario starts right here technically, although this is sort of the front door of it. So we didn't want to make any changes to this wonderful building, inside and out. But I didn't want to make any changes, but but we needed to turn it to get some of the requirements for a condo. With that was we're using the same trash area, and that works out. We are adding some stairs down at this level, at the first level, to get up to I'll show you next, is an outdoor space on the flat roof, the existing flat roof. So here's those stairs. These are all existing outdoor areas. It's just a terrific little place. And so before, when we came in before, we just had this deck we had looked at. And you can see this on the photos where you can and cannot see it on the photos here. This deck already exists right here. The other thing they wanted to do, regardless of whether it was turning back into duplex, was to enclose this porch here, which is 9 feet by 14 feet. And you can see that, we'll see that on our elevations, and you can also look at those photographs, which shows it clearly. We have story poles up for all the additions here. So this next review is somehow it got missed in the reviews, and this space didn't work, or it was too unnatural for people to come and use this. So this was the common open outdoor space, which these people get to from this deck, and these people get to from this deck. So these stairs were added, and you'll see short parapet walls right here and here. And look at those. Did you guys take a site walk? Did you look at this?
We weren't informed.
No.
Okay. Well, there's poles up, and they're photographed on here. Now you can't see this. You can't see. You can't see any, standing here. You can't see any of this. You can see it from across the street. You can see this stair here, right here.
Okay.
Let's go to the elevations. Sheet A201. So standing on Canna Perdita, of course, you don't quite see it like this, but as it is an elevation. This portion, this plaster wall is added here. This from there to there is added, putting a little bench there. You can walk out here. They walk out here right now. And then this wall is just a wall right here now. It's opened up with these stairs coming down like this. The detail on this building is just so simple. It's worth going to look at and copying for other projects. Just as low-key and hand-done as possible. So that's all we're doing. We're matching all the details on here. Here's that stair. Here's that stair which you have to go up into the project a little bit to see that. And here's a stair that opens up and it leaves this window underneath it. And then this is the little enclosed porch. You can see this is the existing rail of the porch, and they're enclosing this little bit. This, you look down to the entry. It's a fun little entry there. So this is just a little study, actually. I've got wine bottles in here, a window here, and then these two windows here. And this looks back. If you go back up to the end of El Casario and look back, this is what you'll see. Right now you see this, and then you'll see this addition here. You won't be able to see, look back from those decks on El Casario. You look out to the Canna Perdita. And if you need to see more details,
A little context.
a little more context. And then there's actually some cross sections here. And here's that stair I didn't show you in elevation. It fits in here. So here's this parapet wall we're adding here. Not out to the front here. Okay.
Nothing?
That's it.
Do we have any public comment? No public comment. Yes, but he's not scooting around fast enough to ask me. So we're on to questions from the commission. Yes, Mr. Drury.
Represent exactly what? 'Cause there's the ones in the from the El Caserio access, and there's ones you can see from Canon Perdido, kind of looking up, and they represent the height of.
Well, you want to point out on here which?
Well, I was looking from the street,
Okay.
so I can see on the east side, the east elevation, I can look up and see story poles.
That's that bottom elevation.
Yeah, you're standing in the street. It's the bottom elevation there.
Yeah. Here.
Yeah.
Right here. There's a 2x4 across here.
Right.
And then over here, there's a 2x4 like this.
I think it shows up in the pictures, the photos.
Yeah. It's on the photos. And
Okay.
then there's a 2x4 right across here. You have to get back. You can't see it from the street. You have to get back.
it's there's not much to look at, but they're there. Yeah. Okay.
And then these of course you can see from Canon Perdido and from the alley from the El Casario.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Suding.
Just wondering, Mr. Shelton, if you had met with any of the El Caserio community.
No, I had the owners do that.
Okay, and everything was copacetic.
Yeah.
That's what I was-
Any other questions? If there are no questions, I'll take comments.
You know, I got to say, the details and the scale is just right. I have no problem with this.
Would you like to make a motion?
Staff hearing officer, right? So that would be a continuance to that.
Yes.
I'd like to comment, to say something, to
Yes.
make comment. These are the type of things that they're so very minor, and it does affect the direct neighbors, and it's almost like a neighborhood thing. Like if the neighbors don't see their privacy intruded upon, I don't think this is the city's business to really, because everything matches the architecture, is well designed and so forth. The only issue the hearing officer may have is that it's hard for us to understand it sitting here to see, if something looks into somebody else's area or not, because the area is so tight. But if that's not the case, I'm totally fine with it. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no.
Do we have additional comments or?
Just that I think that whatever goes to staff hearing should say that the commission agrees with the proposed solution for the outdoor common open space.
Mr. Adams, perhaps you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would make a motion that it's compatible with the neighborhood and the building, and that the positive comments about the outdoor space solutions, and continue this to the staff hearing officer. That's my motion.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you, Mr. Shelton.
And we'll be back construction documents if we get approval.
Yeah,
So-
I think you will. Thank you.
And if you have a chance, get in that building. It is terrific. You've
Matt-
been in it? Yeah,
Yes.
it's really fun. So this is yours.
Madam Chair, when it returns, it can go back on consent, correct?
This is not different than this, is it?
Right, same.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll indicate that in the motion.
Yes.
Okay, go back.
We are, good God, early for the fourth item. Why don't we take a break of 15 minutes, unless they appear sooner. I wish they'd watch.
So I'm sorry that she had something else to do.
If she can be here at 3:45, if she's here at 3:46, I'm not going to be
will I, Suzette. Either will I. Are you up for by yourself? I'll sit with you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but I have to.
Oh, really, kill Cottage 12.
Yeah, this could work here.
Plenty of time.
Oh, gosh. Okay, please. Let's go slow.
We can look at it in excruciating detail.
That's right. Sorry. Whatever you were trying to slip by us.
Darn.
So we were going to. Oh, I may open us soon. Forward. This is for cottage number 12. We had a meeting, and the motion last time was continued 2 weeks with the following comments. Restudy the fenestration of the west and east elevations to match the Henry Letty plan more closely, specifically the massing. Study the plate heights to reduce massing. Revert back to the plaster guardrail on the south elevation. Go back to the wrought iron guardrail on the south elevation in the center of the unit. Restudy fenestration and massing on the north and south elevations. There is no preference regarding the fountain on the north elevation. Will you introduce yourselves for the record?
Certainly.
Trish Allen with Suzanne Elledge Planning and Permitting.
And Jim Lefevre with Gensler. And the
Thank you.
Okay. Well, good. I'm sorry we had a little bit of a misfire last time, and that really, in some ways, dealt with the fact that it'd been over a year and a half since we had worked on the job, and we started with the wrong documents when we were preparing to come here. So that's been cleaned up, and in addition to that, I think we've taken a look at all of the comments that you made and responded to them in some way. Just a real quick reminder, we are talking about Cottage 12. It's the one highlighted in what we're labeling as Zone 3. This is a zone that consists entirely of cottage-type residential units, hotel residential units. Cottage 12, 4, and 13 were the 3 units that were deemed to be non-historic. Cottage 4 has been replaced. Cottage 13 will be renovated into the honeymoon cottage. And Cottage 12, which was probably of all of them the most unfortunate building on the site, we've decided the best thing to do with it is to take it out and to put in a building that will be much more in character with the site. Cottage 12 was a 6-unit cottage, and it will continue to be a 6-unit cottage. There's a little closer detail and a key to the references of the elevations of Cottage 12 and the adjacent Cottage 13, the honeymoon cottage, and Cottage 11, which is clearly one of the very special cottages on site. We'll talk landscape plan later when Katie gets here if we need to. This is unchanged. Most of the sheets in this set are completely unchanged from what you've seen before. So what I'm going to do, I think, is just zoom straight forward to the elevations, which I see some of you have already found. And we'll talk about what we talked about before and how we've adjusted to it.
Before you continue, perhaps we can have the previous elevations brought forward again so that we can do our comparisons.
Thank you.
I'm not going to need to say anything.
Great. And by that I also mean the previous ones that we had approved and which we were comparing these to.
Yeah. Yeah, let me do the obvious piece first then while we're looking for those. The obvious piece being the transposition of the 2 railing details. And this, in fact, is what had been approved previously, as you'll see when we dig the drawings out. Not this. The one with the high plaster had been approved, and
all
this,
right.
that was the misfire that we made. We just went back to the wrong reference documents. So that, as you can see, has been reversed. It's been put back the way it was in the drawings that you'll see in just a minute that describe how it would be.
Great. Thank you. So let's find those reference elevations and, all right. Okay. So let's, however you want to paper us here.
Bit of a challenge here.
Okay, there we go.
That's why we like working with half-size sets.
Yes, there's that little guy.
Okay, so clearly, what you'd looked at before had the large plaster and facade on the southwest corner, and I have to agree with, I forget which of you said that this did a good job of breaking up the horizontality that frequently happens in a hospitality type project, and I like this elevation a lot. The only change is a little bit programmatically different from this is we have gone to a round column in here. That was actually in one of the earlier Henry Lenny schemes, and we kind of liked it, and we put it in. Otherwise, we're pretty similar. The rest of the moves we've made, and we did respond, I think, to each one of your points, are a little bit subtler to see, perhaps. But what we have done is we've taken 8 inches out of the floor to floor on the first level. We've taken another 8 inches out of the floor to floor of the second level. That results in considerably less plaster above the windows, top and bottom. You can see there's quite a bit less here. There's quite a bit less here, and as we go around all the other elevations, you'll see that we've reduced the plaster. At the moment, we're trying to preserve the ceiling space in the rooms. It's a 9-foot floor to ceiling in the upper floors, and it varies because we have 3 different pads to deal with the topography on the lower floor, ranging, I believe, from 9.6 to 10.6 in the biggest one. The other change that we did make in looking at the fenestration on this facade is this one door. We have increased the height of the door by 6 inches. And we just felt, again, that it did a couple things. It sort of broke up the line that we were otherwise going to get across the facade. And it just sort of reduced the space in here. And we felt that that really improved the way this looks over that building. Okay, on the back side of the building, it's up here. Let's see if I can wrestle this around for just a moment.
Well, you know, I'm not sure we really need to see those as much as we need to see this one.
Okay. Those are these.
Yes, these are our reference point.
Okay, so that the concern was the way this particular window had intersected with the covering, and it had, because of the way the building had grown a little bit during the design period, it had dropped out of the little shed roof. So we've now relocked the 2 elements together. And this window is, again, what we basically have done is maintained the window and brought the roof down to it. At this point, what we're attempting to do is to take that 8-inch and 8-inch out of the plenum space that we've reserved for mechanical space and preserve the ceiling heights. That may or may not be possible in the long run, and if we have to sacrifice something, we'll just get a little lower ceiling heights in the guest rooms. So I don't anticipate any reason the building would need to grow beyond this. Let's see, was there anything else on this facade?
No, but you lower. Sorry,
Excuse
never
me.
mind. Never mind. I'll get to that.
Okay.
What happened with that?
The fountain, Katie had expressed a desire not to have it. She didn't think that this was an appropriate facade to have it on. There was a little discussion about that. As a technical architect, there are waterproofing problems in having water running against the back of the building, so I'd prefer not to have it. I think the determination of the committee was that it was...
There was no determination.
There was no determination.
Yeah, it was just however you wish to deal with it.
Yeah, so we decided for we'd really rather spend our money on other more important features on this building, I think. Side elevations. Now, I have taken the opportunity of given a little bit more time to work on it. You'll see that we are beginning to deal with issues like downspouts, which are going to have to be here. You'll see in the detail section in the back, we're talking about half-round copper downspouts, 3-inch circular, or half-round 4-inch gutters, round 3-inch copper downspouts. And this is consistent with what we've done elsewhere on the project. And it's desire to both have premium materials and materials that are historically appropriate. Again, the same slight squeeze to the building. It takes a rise out of the stair and just tightens up some of the spaces. On the right east elevation, we did make a couple of other changes. One of the things that's happened is these windows, because of the topography, have been pushed into a well. If you compare it to the other drawings, which we don't really need to, what we've done is we've brought the head of these up to the same height as the door, which we increased 6 inches. So essentially they've been brought 6 inches further up out of the grade and reduces the amount of well here. And that does remind me that this window, which we had shown as a pair of 6 light windows, I've just reduced to four light windows and pretty much eliminated the well that they were in. These 2 spaces in the back for bathrooms, these windows are going to be shaded or curtained virtually all the time anyhow. So those are different. Okay, there's a difference here which is kind of frustrating. And this is a drafting problem with this set of drawings more than anything else, because the projecting roof here just isn't shown on that drawing. Yeah. So, you know, what he did is just show the roof that was on this one wing and not the wing behind.
Yes.
Which, you know, in many ways, as you walk up and down this path, this is the elevation you'll perceive. This portion of the roof is quite far behind. But that is a true elevation.
Yes.
So,
Okay. Do
Okay.
you feel?
So we can go into the details, or however you want to lead the discussion at this point.
I'll ask the commission. Do we need to have them talk about the details, or shall I ask for questions from the commission? Any preferences?
I vote for questions.
All right. Let's go to questions. Wait. Do we have any public comment? No. All right. Let's go to questions then.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
On the west elevation, it looks like it's changed a little bit, particularly down on this end. If you look at the approved set of plans, this window is not in line with the window above. It also doesn't have the same treatment that you're giving it there, and I was just wondering if there was a reason for the difference in the placement of that window and the difference on the bottom there.
This is a window that occurs a number of times on the El Encanto project in essentially this configuration. And I have to admit, we took that window to be identical to the window elsewhere in the project. Just out of curiosity, I see you.
I don't think it shows there.
Doesn't show.
Okay, yeah, and here it is, and he's drawn it the same way here.
Do you have a photo of that, Jim?
We have a photo with the Mission Village.
Okay, then why don't you talk about that window lining up?
Steal your drawings.
Quite a bit different, though.
Yeah.
The one that they're proposing.
So you've got this.
That's the fireplace is pushing it this way, and it basically is attaching to the fireplace in both cases. Similar relationship. And I think
You can't move this further because you're in your
I
fireplace.
certainly can't pull into the fireplace
It would
down
have to
there.
be the upper floor one move. The upper floor one moves that way.
It's conceivable to move that one a couple feet back if we had to.
But then it's not centered on that, which I think is okay.
I mean, it certainly, there's a lot of what I would kind of call arbitrary quirkiness in this project, and we're not at all indisposed to mimicking that as it goes forward. You know, there's a lot of times you have to look at these elevations and say, why in the world did they do that? Yeah.
Do we have further questions from the commission?
Madam Chair, I guess I'll just kind of continue with that other question. We're showing this window
yes.
here, and what you're showing on the drawing is slightly different. This one has a more of an extended, I don't even know what you would call that, base to it or corbel to it, bracket or whatever, pediment, whatever, yeah, and a completely different top. So I'm wondering if that's your intent and it's just not shown that way. I think it's the next one. There are 5 variations.
I'm sure
Yeah.
there are quite a number of variations. Usually what we're seeing in the field is here, it's really the identical window on both sides.
Yeah.
It's got a copper top to it, a copper sheet metal top. I don't think that shows in this photograph, but it does. And then it's a sweeping plaster bottom.
But the plaster bottom has a larger proportion to it, and you're showing equal, which makes it quite pedestrian to make it, you know, equal.
This has a very elegant taper to it and just nice proportions. Not to say that this isn't elegant, but it's different.
Some of that may be, and you know, I don't want to say that we went out and measured this exactly when we did. Some of it maybe this is a little oblique too, and we're seeing it a little from the side, whereas this is a straight frontal. We can certainly tweak the things, and in fact, I think what's happened in the past where we've done this is that the contractors have gone over to the windows on the site and sort of looked at that for documentation as much as to our drawings. But we can certainly get into that a little bit more if we'd like.
Do we have any other questions? Mr. Schallenberger?
Since you've reestablished the solid plaster guardrail, what does that look like? The guardrail, the cap specifically.
It is plaster up and over.
Just rounded. Is that one of your details? I didn't see it there.
I'm not seeing it here.
I know.
That's what I was looking for. I think that's based on field measurements on the one that's on the back of cottage 11. Yeah. But you know, it does occur in a number of different variations on the site. The one we're looking at in the photograph was on the elevation of cottage 6.
Perhaps you could bring a photograph of full frontal view of the one you're saying is measured.
Okay, and sure. And I think the one on 11, yeah, okay. we could certainly do that.
Okay.
There it is, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
that's more like it,
Okay,
definitely.
so you're looking at, okay, there it is. So.
And I remember we had looked at that cottage extensively.
Yeah, cottage, without a doubt, cottage 11 is one of the nicest
Yeah,
cottages on
yeah.
site.
And I remember the historic structures report on that
It's got
too.
all these sort
Yeah.
of follies and very interesting little bits to it, but it's just...
So perhaps the detail can follow. I'm assuming that this is the detail we just looked at.
Possibly not. This is a set of
I
drawings
see.
from 11, so it may not be the same detail. But this was for the renovation of 11. However, it could follow that one. And we can dig this one out.
I just noticed on 2 different sections on 1209.10, there shows a guardrail that's basically just a square top, plastered up and
Yes.
over.
Yes.
And on 1209.11, there is a guardrail that appears to have some type of molding or coping. So, by key 5 bedroom.
Oh, yes.
So I just, either is fine. I just
Yeah.
wondered if you thought about that.
Actually, this sheet should have been substituted in wasn't, because this shows the metal guardrail out
Yes.
front where it isn't. Yeah. Yeah. Oops. Yeah, the intention was it would be a wood frame stucco construction with basically a solid top and essentially bulldozed or softened edges. And that's fairly consistent with a lot of the site walls. And so we're not, in general, not trying to introduce a lot of very fine ornament because that doesn't seem to be consistent with the site. Only because we're going final for that. And we're perfectly happy to accept directions to make some adjustments, and we'll absolutely do them.
Are there any other questions? I do have a question. I think a remark was made last time regarding windows with balconies attached when there's no point if there's can't get out. In this case and in this case.
Yeah, so we have a balcony here that was wrapped around, but you're right, you really can't get to it.
So
And this one is you're entirely right, this is purely decorative.
was there no attempt to change it to a door, or?
This one, there was a problem with I think Alex actually commented on this in the historic report that they were trying to minimize how close this got to Cottage 11. These things are very close, and she felt that a full balcony here would be getting far too close to Cottage 11, and she could accept this much of an expression, but she didn't really want an occupiable balcony in that location. This one is, say, window off of a closet in a bathroom. It could be made into a door. I don't know.
Or just get rid of the balcony.
Or get rid, and I wouldn't be offended to get rid of the balcony.
Let's look back.
Can we look back at that and see if that destroys anything?
Hey, simple is fine. And this is, as far as I'm concerned, of all of the elevations, right? The west elevation is one of the less important ones. Cottage 11, which is the or Cottage 13, which is the non-historic cottage, is right here. This has got this fairly nice, lively staircase on
Madam
it.
Chair,
So
I personally don't feel that elevation, the west elevation, suffers any from elimination of that balcony. In fact, I think it even highlights that oriel window a little bit more. It just
faux balcony.
Faux balcony, yeah. But I personally don't feel that it suffers by removal.
Okay, well, since we're done with questions, then I will go to comments.
Oh, that was a comment.
Sorry. And that, well, I'll count that as a comment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and finish my comments if that's okay. Restudy the proportions of the oriel window on the west elevation and on the east elevation to more mimic the proportions at Cottage 6.
11?
Was it 11? You had it in here.
Yes, it was 11.
More accurate proportions, okay.
And we can refer to that if you'd like.
Yeah, building 11, oriel window. Okay, and then restudy the location or positioning of the upper window on the west elevation with relation to the lower window at the north end of the west elevation. Is that right? Yeah.
No, this is south end.
Is that the south end?
This is south.
You're right. South end of the west elevation.
Actually, as I look at this, not exactly stacked.
No, it's not, but it needs to be either a little bit more or...
And it probably would move in this direction.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Yeah, the limitation may be that as we move it this way, we may not be able to get it much further than the same relationship with the window below, kicked the other way.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
a special favor, being that this is the first time we've seen gutters on any of the buildings, if you all could comment on whether you like the placement or want to see any changes in that, I'd really appreciate it.
Those are my comments.
Cool.
the north side, if the fountain is not going to be incorporated, there should be a landscape element that's vertical. It might be a tree, I'm not sure, but there should be a landscape element that responds now to the missing fountain. That elevation needs something soft to break that up on that north side.
And Katie did say that there would be.
Good. I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
it's
no.
not on the plan yet.
Yeah, and I haven't seen it either.
So that's something we want to see.
Okay. Yes.
And I think it's come a long way. I like the proportions, and I think whatever's put in that void where the fountain was, I'm sure that Commissioner Adams will have something to say about that. It's a good-looking building.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, in response to Mr. Jacobus's comment that we should comment on the downspout placements, unfortunately the downspouts aren't shown on all of the elevations.
Nope.
So it's hard to comment on those.
Thank you.
Just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah,
Something
no.
that can come back and really wreck a building later.
Yes.
If you want to give me some guidance on the ones we have shown, I'll certainly accept it. What we are anticipating is for each horizontal run, we'll probably end up with a downspout. Try to minimize them on this one where we have a peaked roof where we might be able to collect at a corner. And then for the balcony with the solid rail, we're going to have to do a scupper and a collection box on the downspout to pick it up.
We have to see what that scupper looks like.
Yes.
The scupper
So
is
I'll-
probably historically what they've used is a piece of red round tile that they work into the plaster wall.
For the scupper?
Yeah.
Or, I guess I was thinking more of the collector.
The collector would be a copper box. And I don't want to make a huge feature of it.
No, I agree,
Simple.
but let's see the detail of that.
Can I clarify, this is agendized as a final review, but it's here for preliminary approval. So the title says final, but then it says preliminary approval. I don't understand.
It's preliminary
Right,
approval that
but
they're requesting.
it still says final above, so I'm just asking, why is it agendized as final?
Yes, that's a mistake.
Okay.
I don't think it's ready.
That's why, because I'm wondering why are we looking at details, so on and so forth. All right, so.
We're going to have to do some serious flogging.
We were excessively optimistic, perhaps.
Any other comments?
Are there any other comments? I'm going to summarize the comments then, though I think probably Gabrielle was smart and took them. Remove the balcony at the window.
Okay. Well, just
Don't be bashful.
trying to help. Yeah. That's that. So there are some
Issues with drawing coordination, I guess, so to speak. Just so, you know, if it went to final and then it went into the building department and then it gets, you know, to avoid anything down the line. Section 1 on a 120910 doesn't match the cut line on the drawing. So it, and in fact, the more important cut line is on the second floor plan. If you were to bring that cut line up, you know, you're going through that new solid rail balcony.
Yes.
So if you look at the section, though, it's still cutting through a ornamental iron balcony.
Yeah, this is, you're right.
So I'm just, and I only mention it just, you know, I know what you're trying to do here, but the building department doesn't. So
Okay, no, it's
there could be some issues. And then on the elevation,
very much appreciated, actually.
A120900, I understand the second floor is continuous at 523 4 inches as the elevation. First floor changes as we change in grade.
Yes.
But doing just some quick checks, because I was curious how you squish the floors and the cavity space there. The math works out that it's a 10-foot, 10-inch difference at key 3, say, okay? Its scale is to 11-foot 4. So there's a little bit, I understand what you're trying to do, but I just wonder if there is a problem. I mean, in other words, can you come down that far? So, and then, okay, since we're on this elevation page, on the elevation 1, are we really intending a 4-foot 6-inch sill for that window, and then the head height's going to be way up, I don't know, what is it, 9 feet? 9 feet 6 inches for that window head?
We like to challenge our builders with
and the operator to open that.
Well, actually, that window is a problematic window. If you look at the plan, it's right where the mirror should be on the vanity. You know, it's part of the problem is we're really engaging in inside-out design on a lot of these things, and
okay. And maybe if you can indicate ceiling heights, you know, sort of as a line, and just an overlay line on the elevations, that sort of helps gauge window and door heads, I think.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench into my previous comment about the Oriole window. Maybe, I just wanted to get a sense from the other commissioners too, maybe that Oriole window shouldn't more closely match the one at Cottage 11, because that one at Cottage, like you said, Cottage 11 is a really special cottage, and to have the Oriole window match the detail at Cottage 12 would sort of diminish the importance of it at Cottage 11. However, I feel what's being shown on the drawings isn't quite there yet, and it needs some refining. Particularly, you know, the detail that you showed there. So I don't know if the historian, the rest of the commissioners feel that way, that we should not try to emulate that Oriole window. What's that? I meant the historian on the commission.
Well, I think it's an either-or kind of thing. I think when we liked it when Henry proposed it because of the sort of the one decorative sort of proportions. But if it's removed, I mean, this is a new building. I mean, Alex can speak to that too.
Well, let's get the project historian to weigh in on it as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to belabor it so much, but I sort of
important little thing.
I sort of reconsidered as I was thinking.
Thank you. That's a good
about it.
point. Generally speaking, when you're trying to, the new building is supposed to look old. I mean, it's supposed to be compatible but differentiated. But that doesn't so much go into actual architectural details so much as massing, copying everything. And it seems to me you could do either, because this Oriole window on building 11 is over on the back side.
it's not terribly prominent.
No, it's up against the neighbor's property, so you don't get to see it. No, unless you're in the cottage and walk around, you're not going to get to see it. It's not on that west elevation where you'd see it going by the east elevation of this building.
And they're not both seen at the same time.
No,
Right.
So that there is then a possibility to then use that, because then actually it's more visible to the rest of people coming through.
The only reservation I might make, if you allow me to speak for just a moment, is these are a little larger because it's two of only three windows in a fairly large room. The Cottage 11 one is a bathroom window, and I would not like
to move the microphone closer.
Oh, apologies. I would like to maintain as much glass as I can, just to get some of this wonderful Santa Barbara light and air into this.
Well, then, that being said, and I can certainly agree with that, and I think that if the proportion, if you want to keep it that width, I think, in my mind, what needs to be studying is the base of this.
The pediment that's supporting.
Exactly.
Podium,
To have them just a mirror image of each other, I would.
Okay.
go, yeah, but I don't mind the width of it at all or anything like that. I think just to give it a little bit more character and not just a mirror.
You mean so that the top is going to be smaller than the bottom?
Correct. Correct.
Instead of absolutely exact.
Exactly. Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to summarize the comments. Please correct me if I've lost anything. Please remove the balcony on the west elevation at the window. Please restudy the proportion of the oriel window to not necessarily emulate that of Building 11, however, to approach more of an elegant proportion. I'll stop there. Restudy the location of the upper window at the south end of the west elevation. As there is no fountain on the north elevation of view, there should be a landscape element to replace,
or
to soften the elevation. There are issues regarding drawing coordination which you have been advised to please correct and when you bring back. Overall, I believe the Commission feels that you have addressed our previous comments. And I guess yes, provide additional details, particularly if you're going to come for final.
How about show all downspout locations?
Yes.
Okay.
Walls and wall details, like the solid railing, right at the top.
Are there specific details you would like to see?
I think the guardrail sounds like an important detail. If it's continuous throughout, it's just one detail.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to look for a motion from the Commission. Well, the question is it going to get preliminary? Or, I mean, I'm looking for a motion.
I would move for a preliminary approval with the comments. Move for preliminary approval with the aforementioned comments. Applicant to return to consent addressing each of those comments.
I'll second.
Madam Chair, continued how many weeks or indefinitely?
2 weeks, right?
And could we get final on consent too? Or do
Right.
we have,
That's the
okay.
motion.
And that would be the.
That's the motion.
Who's doing consent in Don's absence? Okay.
Oh, well,
Is
that,
enough time?
for that, I want to come to full board.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Landscape?
Opposed?
Who is the second?
Landscape as well, to
Robert?
consent.
Okay.
And I do that.
All the, I believe we had all in favor, none opposed, none abstained.
And you got the seconder?
Yeah.
And Mr. Adams will be there for the landscape element. Thank you.
Thank you.
And perfect. Wow. We're going to move right to, and let me just advise the applicant that there is a 10-day period during which the applicant may appeal, someone may appeal.
Yeah, not the applicant.
Just so, not the applicant. You would not appeal yourself.
Well, you can if you want.
Unless there's contention within that camp.